Welcome to episode 22 of 1530. Today we're going to be discussing win percentage of total points and the impact that that has on a tennis match and how actually you can win a match without winning a majority of the points played with the unique scoring of tennis, unlike other sports like soccer or basketball. We're going to discuss some of the unique matches that actually happened this year too in particular. So we'll discuss that, as well as kind of what's going on the tour, how the rest of the year is shaping up as they go through the Asian swing right now, and then they'll finish back up in London for the World Tour Finals, at least for those top 8 guys. My name is Ben.
My name is Matt, and I'm going to be starting y'all out with the stat of the day today, switching things up a little bit. So Ben, stat of the day, as you mentioned, is focused around the percentage of points needed to be won in order to have a good chance of winning the match. So I guess my question for you is, what do you think has been the average amount of points percentage-wise won by the number one player in the world from 91 to 2016 in the Open era?
Ooh, that's a really good question. It's going to be in the 50s, but the low 50s, because I know once you get into like that 53, maybe, it's going to be too hard to sustain. So I'd guess 51 or 52. Final answer, I'll go 51%.
Oh, that's pretty good. Yeah, it's 55%. That's the stat of the day.
55, dang it.
55%, okay. Yeah. Which, I don't know, I guess you're a lot better with these numbers than I am, because I was thinking it would have to be way higher than that, right?
Yeah.
But we go back to this, tennis is a game of inches and a game of really there are a few critical points throughout the match, and you only have to win 10% more points than your opponent to really have, to be the number one player in the world. No, so that's the stat.
5%. Well, 5%, right? Because it's 55.
Well, yeah, that's true. Because you're going, yeah, that's true. Yep. So that was crazy to me to look at that. And I was thinking around on Ultimate Tennis Stats just to look at this for a little bit. I was like, well, maybe, maybe their service games are really short, but their return games are really long, things of that nature. But if you look at the return to service points ratio for, who leads in that, and career-wise, Roger Federer actually has the best return to service points ratio at 1.071. So he's basically playing half and half his points. So that's interesting. He's winning, winning those points mostly equal on both sides of the court. I don't know. That was interesting to me.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Especially because sometimes we like to focus a lot on how well you return. And then so numbers pop out really for Rafa and for Djokovic. But if you go on the serve side of things, you don't necessarily see those guys at the top. You see more Isner and those type of guys who maybe don't have the return game. And so like, well, it's clearly got to be the return points. That's what determines it. But Federer, right, like you're saying, he's made a living of doing both actually really well, especially, his serve's kind of underrated. I remember especially when he went up against Roddick in that 2009 final. And Roddick was acing a bunch, but Federer actually served in more aces in that match. So his serve's underrated. He returns well, but obviously he can serve clutch when he needs to. And I think that's what's helped him. He's been very balanced over his career, like you're saying.
Right. Yep. Rafa comes in at third with the points ratio. And
who was second on that list?
Andre Agassi.
Agassi, interesting.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. Very good return game.
Yeah. So if you were to look at, let's see, if we look at total points, one percentage for career, Rafa has the lead right now with 54.51%. And then Djok and Fed are right behind him at 54.36 and 54.17. So they're right there. And then just in 2019, Rafa still has the lead, but he's won 56.31% of all the points he's played in 2019. And then again, Djok is right behind him at 55% and Fed at 54.74. So again, hanging right around that 55%, and Rafa's a little bit above that right now. But yeah, I thought that was interesting.
No, that's super fascinating. And that kind of leads in, like you said, what we want to talk about. We want to talk about win percentage and kind of how it swings, but also just how sometimes, like you said, it's a game of inches. It's unique because someone can win the first set or second set pretty easily, and the other guy can come back, kind of like we saw in the U.S. Open final. Kind of was reminded about that
Exactly.
even though the match seems like maybe it's won, it's not over till it's over, like Yogi Berra always says, right? And so looking through some of the numbers on Ultimate Tennis Stats I looked specifically for the lowest percentage of points won where the person still won the match, if that makes sense. So for example, if you look at ultimatetennisstats.com, the one match, it was in Roland Garros. It's Tsonga who was defeated by Gulbis, and Gulbis only won 43% of the points, but Tsonga won. And that seems a little mind-boggling. And if you're confused, that's fine, because actually Gulbis was down 2-5 and Tsonga retired. So we're not going to look at that number there. So it's a little bit extreme, 43%. There's a couple other retirements. Then the next match with the lowest total number of points won, where the person still was able to win the match, was on grass. This was in 1997. This was Magnus Norman, who coaches Stan Wawrinka. He beat Goran Ivanovic. I totally butchered his name, but Goran was Chilic's coach for a bit. And so pretty interesting. That was on Wimbledon on the grass. And so basically what happened there is just obviously some lopsided sets, tiebreaker, and then it was, 14-12 in the fifth. And so Magnus only won 45% of the points, and he went on to win the match. So that's pretty crazy, like you're saying, especially when you consider the number one player in the world is winning in the 50s, mid-50s on points won. So you can actually win a tennis match winning less than 50% of the points, as it's shown. And of course, right, what are some of the matches we talked about this year? Do you remember any of the matches this year that were famous for that?
No, I'm not. You have to.
Yes. So one, I didn't even realize until I looked up the number, but there's one at the U.S. Open, and then there's the famous one at Wimbledon, the Wimbledon final.
Federer,
yes, of course. Federer won. Federer won more points than Djokovic. Djokovic only won 48% of the points and still was victorious. Again, there's a lopsided set. Federer won one of the sets 6-1. Every single set that Djok won went to tiebreak. So let's first dive before we get to the Wimbledon match. We've talked about the Wimbledon match quite a bit. I want to look at that. It's the Verdasco-Chung match. And so this is one I didn't really pay attention to. I think part of it was because it was so early on. It was the round of 64 at the U.S. Open this year. So Chung, we know Chung, a lot of promise. He made the semifinals of the Australian Open a few years ago, beat Djokovic. He struggled with some foot injuries, though. He struggled with different injuries. He was able to beat Verdasco, which we know Verdasco can be a tricky customer no matter what the surface is. So if we go ahead and look at the numbers, this match, again, was interesting. Verdasco won the first two sets, as you can imagine. They were lopsided, 6-1, 6-2. And then Chung was able to claw back and win the next three sets, 7-5, 6-3, 7-6. So kind of honestly looking like the U.S. Open men's final that we had this year, right? So, but if we look at the numbers here, so Chung was able to he went to the net a little bit less than Verdasco, but he was winning 10% more points at the nets. When he got to net, it was a put away, basically. Aces, Verdasco, they basically had the same amount of aces and double faults. First serve in was in the 60s for both of them. So they were both getting quite a few of their first serves. And Chung was slightly better, 4% better overall at winning those first 4 points. And then on the second serve, Verdasco was significantly better, 15%. So kind of interesting that Chung was able to survive this match with almost identical numbers up to this point and not being able to protect the second serve. Like I said, net points were in favor of Chung. Break points were pretty tight. Verdasco converted a little bit more of his, though, converted 6 out of 12 compared to Chung's 4 out of 12, right? Because Verdasco went up a double break, it looked like, in probably the first and second sets. And then receiving points overall was almost identical. They were in the mid-30s, 38 and 35%. So kind of a weird match if you look how split the numbers were. They each were in the 40s on winners. Unforced errors, Chung had 10 less about. And then overall total points won. Verdasco won 151 points to Chung's 141 points. So It's just one of those weird ones where it's almost 2 matches, right? You take the first 2 sets and the last 3 sets, totally different matches. Now that I'm going through the numbers here, it looks like it's even more lopsided. First 2 sets, Verdasco's winning 20% more on that second serve. And in the second set, Chung was 0 for 6 on second serve points won. So it's 50% to 0. So very, very different as you go into the third, fourth, and fifth sets. It looks like Chung was able to swing it around on second serves on every set except for the fifth set. And he won it in a fifth set tiebreaker. One of the great things about the US Open, going to a fifth set, you get that tiebreak at 6-all. So I don't know. Anything stand out to you about that match or about the concept in general about you can win fewer points and win the match?
No, I think it's just crazy. I don't know of any other sport that that's a realistic thing. I think to me it's interesting, right? On a personal level, as we go out and play some tennis for ourselves, tennis is not a game of perfection in the sense that you have to win every single point. And so to me, looking at these numbers kind of on a macro scale, we can say, all right, well, it's all right that, your opponent's going to hit some good shots. You're going to miss some shots. You don't have to win 90% of the balls that get played, and so kind of take some of that emotional stress or tension out of it that a lot of times complicates our playing ability. We can say, all right, we missed that point, but that's all right. We've got a large margin for error. We just need, 55% or whatever we need to keep going. And so I think that's something that personally for us as players, instead, more than just even watching, we can use that to help us out a little bit.
Yeah, and I agree. There's kind of a psychological element. Some of the best players, right? They don't only have their physio who's helping them with their physical body and their training. They also, a lot of them have mental fitness coaches or whatever they call them that they're able to help. A sports psychologist, I guess would be the proper term, right? And they're able to help them psychologically have an edge in the game. And that could be something like you're saying, where you know what, it's okay even if you lose half the points, right? You need to win the right points and stay positive. I think, there's a lot of power in positive thinking, but it's just amazing that, right, that Djokovic was able to stay strong. The whole crowd's rooting against him,
right,
with Federer, and Djokovic happened to win the right points in the tiebreaks. He was clutch, even though Federer, beat him in a lopsided set. I don't know if Federer's ever got him in a 6-1 set, at least in a slam. So yeah, he was able to stay tough, and I think that's good for whether you're a player or whether you're, watching your favorite player. That anything can happen. So and it's a great sport for comebacks, especially. Yeah,
I agree. And I think that clutchness it's hard to quantify, right? Especially the mental aspect of this game. It's a real aspect, and you can't really quantify that, but you can see glimpses of it being able to really be measured in things like that match, right? I mean, by all statistical measures, he should have lost. Djokovic should have lost, but somehow he, yeah, exactly like you said, won the points that really mattered, and that's why they play all 5 sets if you need them.
Yeah, which is interesting. I don't know if you were able to catch any of the Laver Cup. I just caught some of the highlights, but it was fun for our viewers or for our listeners. Laver Cup is something put on by Roger Federer initially, and basically they pit some of the best players in Europe versus basically the world. It's a lot of the US, Australia, anybody else but from Europe, and it's kind of a fun competitive environment. Bjorn Borg is the team captain for Team Europe, and John McEnroe is the team captain for Team World, and they kind of compete. There's some singles matches, there's doubles matches, and there's the team side of it, which I guess you get in Davis Cup. But it's just a weekend of fun, and it's cool because each day goes Friday through Sunday. Each day the matches are worth more points. So even if you're down a lot on Sunday, as far as the team points are concerned, you can totally come back, because I think matches are worth 3 points that last day. And so anyways, it was really fun. It was cool to see Federer and Nadal coaching young guys like Tsitsipas and Fognini and giving their tips. And I know a lot of it was for entertainment value, but it was cool to see, their mental aspect of the game. A lot of it was just, hey, stay positive. You got to take it to him, or just like you said, it's okay if he hits a good shot. You just got to keep the pressure on him. It was interesting to see the things that they said, but it made me think about just now as we were talking, how valuable coaches are, because they were able to do on court coaching. And right, that's something in the men's game that we don't get. I wonder how much more valuable a coach would be, like a really good, especially mental type coach, if you were allowed on match coaching. Like when Federer's going in that tiebreaker, if he was able to have his coach, no, maybe not Federer because he's pretty mentally tough dude, but I don't know. Some of these other young players, maybe they would be able to help them.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I wonder if we'll ever see a rule change that way. Maybe not, but Laver Cup, they sure like to experiment with different rules of the game.
That'd be interesting. Can imagine your coach having some live update stats on the match and saying, "No, you're doing this poorly and this well, so stick to that."
Yeah, exactly. They could bring the stats into the game. That's a good point. Yeah, let's go ahead and look at the numbers from that Wimbledon match. We've covered them before, but just interesting to dive into them again. So go ahead and pull out the stats here. So for aces, Federer led, like we talked about, underrated server. He's 25 aces to Novak's 10 over 5 sets. Double faults were Fed had 6, Joke had 9. So really, Joke's plus minus on aces to double faults ratio is only +1. Fed's was +19. First serve points in, 63% to Novak 62%, so almost identical. Win percent on first serve, Federer is so good at this stat, 79% to Djokovic, 74. Win percent on second service, 51% Federer, 47 for Djokovic. 47, that's, especially for Novak, that's not where he'd want to be. If you saw that number, you would have thought he probably lost. And as you can see the trend, right, all the numbers are favoring Fed so far. Net points won, 78% for Fed, 63% for Novak. And Fed went to net 65 times, quite a few times. Break points won, Federer, 7 of 13, and Djokovic, 3 of 8. Receiving points won, Federer, 36%, Novak's 32%. So Novak, again, not the returner that we know, didn't quite get the numbers that we expect him to see. And that leaves Federer with 94 winners to Novak's 54, so almost a 40 more winners, exactly 40 more winners. Unforced errors, Joke had 10 fewer, so that was one thing where he did better, 62 to 52. And total points won, 218 for Fed, 204 for Djokovic. Federer did cover some more distance I know we talked a lot about distance last match, but he covered about a half a meter extra per point at 13.8 meters, just 13.3 meters per point. Which, how does that compare? I want to look, just to give us some side-by-side comparison. We were talking about Rafa and Medvedev. Distance covered per point. Of course, now it's in feet because it's U.S. Open, so that's lovely. I guess I converted divided by 3. So it looks like it's about, and converted, it's 20 meters per point for Medvedev in the U.S. Open final compared to a little over that. So maybe like 23-ish meters for Nadal. Or 22-ish meters for Nadal. So they covered significant, even though it felt like Novak and Roger there, he was probing with the slice and they were all over the court. Nadal and Medvedev covered a significant more amount of distance. And they also went 5 sets. So interesting match. Like we said, the numbers, they all look good for Federer, but in the end, it didn't matter. It was one of these few matches where the person who won more points lost.
Yep.
Let me see here. So I have like out of my ranking here. So I just wanted to see as far as compared to the rest of the matches. Let's see. So Federer, where's he at? Because I wanted to compare to that. Remember, like I mentioned, the 43% or the 45% really with no retirements, where Federer sits against Djokovic, or with that match against the others. So it looks like it's number 82-ish. So it's the 82nd match. Of course, there's others with the exact same percentage, but there's not very often that you see a match like that, or a match where even the winner wins even fewer points. So this is like for all of tennis history. Ultimate Tennis Stats goes all the way back to they were tracking stats. So there's matches in the 80s, 90s. So pretty rare event that we witnessed. And we saw 2 matches because Verdasco won more points as well over Chung. And they were both, I believe, at 48.3%. So 2019, kind of a weird year. One was in a final, one was in the second round. You never know what you're going to get. Matchups are obviously a huge part of that. So Matt, let's I guess just kind of preview for the tour. What's going on the rest of the year, and what players are you watching?
That's a great question. We've got Beijing and Tokyo going on right now. That's got some of the key players playing. I guess, what do we have? Shanghai coming up, and then the ATP, what do they call it? The World Tour.
Yep, I believe there's Paris in between, but most of the top players
I think
skip it. And so, like you're saying, it's going to be World Tour Finals be the last big one.
So we'll see what happens. I know, I mean, obviously I'm always watching Rafa. The last I heard is that he didn't play some of his Labor Cup matches because of a wrist problem.
Correct.
So
some sort of injury, I didn't know what it was.
Yeah. He's got something he's working on and making sure that he's good to go for the major tournaments. So I'm curious to see when he comes back and plays. I don't know. After the U.S. Open, I feel like it's a grind, especially for Rafa. And so wouldn't surprise me to see him drop out of honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if he dropped out of the ATP and just really made sure he was ready for the Aussie Open. As we were talking about earlier off the air, Rafa's only 640 points behind Djok right now for the number one spot. But I don't know. I mean, I think Rafa probably covets that more than the other members of the big three, but I don't know. I think that Grand Slams are too important for him right now, and I would not be surprised to see him not play any others. I wouldn't be surprised to see him play, at least the ATP, that final match.
Yeah, I guess I agree to some extent. I think he probably does see a window to get the number one, and I don't think he'll sacrifice his body for it, but there could be an opening. Djokovic is back. We're trying to recover from injury. He's playing well at Tokyo so far, but really hasn't played anyone yet. So I think if there's an opportunity for Nadal, he'll take it. He might rest Shanghai, but he's never won an ATP World Tour final. I know that's one hit against him on his resume. And so who knows? Maybe he'll sit out Shanghai to try to be ready for the World Tour finals. But
maybe.
I agree. Ultimately, his body is, he's said that before. That's the most important thing. He's not afraid to rest if he needs to. So we'll see. But I think it's definitely a doable target for number one, it depends on how Djok plays, right? If Djok sweeps all the tournaments, it's not going to matter. But I'm interested to watch. So that I think the Beijing is kind of an interesting tournament. A lot of good players there. Murray made his comeback. He beat his first top guy, basically. He beat Berrettini 7-6, 7-6. And this was just coming off a loss to Alex de Minaur, amazing Australian player that beat him in 3 sets. And he plays Dominic Thiem next. That's going to be a really interesting test for Murray. Thiem's the top seed, playing some good tennis. And then also looking at close eye on Tsitsipas and Zverev. They're in the same side of the draw, both playing good tennis. I really want to see Zverev, right? He won the ATP World Tour Finals last year, and the year before that it was Dimitrov. So, see if Djokovic and Federer, these guys are really getting tired at the end of the year. Maybe we could see Zverev have a resurgence, or maybe even Tsitsipas. So, I would say the World Tour Finals, Novak's the favorite, but from there, who knows what can happen, right? I think that'll be really interesting because, like you said, it's a long grind. They've already been playing on hard court for a while, and it's hard court the rest of the way, pretty much, including some indoor courts, and it gets tiring for these guys with injuries and stuff. So we'll see what happens.
It will be interesting for sure.
Yep, I'm just excited for Murray. So hopefully he can continue to be healthy, make a comeback. I was just looking through some of the stats, and they were saying, so Murray, right? We know he has 2 Olympic gold medals. That's actually the most gold medals for any male player, which is impressive. Right, so he set a record right there. Maybe we can see a big 4. If not, the big 3 is always entertaining. So,
well, he wasn't sure he was even going to be able to play again. So the fact that he's out there winning matches, it's great. It's great.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's great for the sport. Fans obviously always enjoy Murray. So, yeah, as always, feel free to visit us at cognitionsphere.com. And our theme music is brought to us by Kevin MacLeod with extras from his song Cool Rock. And until next time, we'll see you on the court. Ben. Go ahead.
I just need to mention those stats that I pulled for total point percentage one. I got them from a guy named Craig O'Shaughnessy. You should go look up his website. It has some interesting statistics. He's involved in a lot of the new age data collection that's involved in tennis. So I just wanted to throw his name out there so that we weren't just stealing his numbers.
That's right. Citing sources. Thank you for that. Yep. And until next time, we'll see you guys on the court.